Hey you guys, John with JRSP, Johnson Reality Self-Protection, and now of course certified instructor with the Medusa Edge Weapon System. I had been searching for something like this for years because, I've trained in a couple different things. I trained in the Cobra Self-Defense System, traditional Krav Maga system for a minute. I trained in, Future Dragons and kickboxing. I trained in Henderson Judo. And, like, I'm not sitting here and saying that, I have an extensive background in those things, but self protection has been, a lifelong pursuit of mine ever since I was old enough to really understand. Really, ever since 9/11, I was an 11-year-old kid who learned on that day that even though we are the most powerful nation in the world, evil can still touch us. And if you haven't really noticed the things going on around lately, I mean, there's always been stuff going on, but um, I don't want to make any of my channels really, other than my TikTok, political. And this isn't about politics because Bruce Lee once said, "Styles divide man." Okay, well, the worst thing that divides man is politics. And so I don't want to get into politics, but if you haven't noticed, things are crazy. Like, people think that they're so unhinged due to their politics that they think that they can just assault people, and people are getting shot left and right. Crazy things are going on. And like I said, I don't want to get too deep into that because I don't want this to be about politics, but nobody's gonna freaking put their hands on me in a violent manner and think that there's not gonna be consequences. And I'm not sitting here trying to act like I'm some tough Billy badass or whatever. Somebody may put their hands on me and beat my ass like to a bloody pulp. I'm not gonna sit here and deny that. The thing is, I don't overestimate my abilities. Okay, in most cases, I underestimate my abilities, but I train, like to, try and be ready to meet the situation in the occasion that it's in or whatever. So, um, I'm not like a big talker, I'm just a big trainer. And the Medusa system, the thing is, I've been looking for a system that basically has no bullshit. If we go right from this manual, this little thin manual, there's no bullshit here. Joe Rogan has talked for years about systems that, are bullshit and stuff like that. Joe Rogan is like the king of hyping Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Personally, I feel like in a situation where there's multiple attackers and stuff like that, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is bullshit. Okay. And the Apple River stabbing trial or case is what I always go back to. Okay. Because that dude, Nikolai Mew, caused so much damage with this little cheap Chinese folding knife. He caused so much damage in seconds. Okay. In seconds, people were messed up and one person was dead. And that's just the reality of knife violence right there. And I mean, that story's not in this book, but it might as well be, because when you introduce a blade into the equation, all this Brazilian Jiu Jitsu nonsense goes out the door. The only system that has really tried to, like, really address, knife defense over the years is Krav Maga. And real Krav Maga people, like I say, I trained in a little bit of Krav Maga, and my Krav Maga instructor, his lineage was from Ite Gil, basically. I don't know if he ever met Ite Gil, but his instructor was trained by Ite Gil. So, and I've seen stuff where Ite Gil was like, knife defense. If you're using knife defense, you're probably still gonna die, but this just gives you like that 1% chance, basically. But you're still probably gonna die. But you should always go out on your shield. But long story short, I was looking for something that's not bullshit. There is no bullshit in a knife. Look at England and the UK and the stabbings, like, and stuff like that. If you read what's in this manual, you will see there's no bullshit here. Okay, there's no bullshit on the end of a knife. There is no slashes in this system. This system's all about stabs, okay? Because the founders understood that. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all great for sport and martial art if that's what you want to train in. But when it comes to self defense, you know, this is where it's at right here. And that's what the Medusa system is. The Medusa system is just a pure self defense system that is an edge weapon system, point driven. But at that same time, though, like millions of questions are asked and answered on a day-to-day basis about use of lethal force, and that's why I train with also less lethal stabbing devices right here. And the founders have given me the permission and the blessing to teach a variant of Medusa basically that sticks to the core principles of Medusa and doesn't deviate from Medusa at all. It's just the core principles of Medusa, but you replace the blade with something that's going to be less lethal, something that's still stabby, but that may not carry the same legal ramifications of if it's a lethal sharp force object. Since I'm also teaching Medusa less lethal, like the founder couldn't express enough that stab can be replaced with strike, it can be replaced with slam, it can be replaced with stick, palm stick, uh, shoot, whatever the situation calls for. Stab can be like adapted on the fly to meet that occasion, basically. So um, if you read the manuals, you don't have to get so locked in now to um, stab. Like it's got to be stab. But for me, I feel being a fist load specialist and palm stick specialist for over 15 years now, I feel like uh, in my personal opinion, you should always have a weapon. I'm always carrying four like options on me at any given time at minimum. Okay, that's the minimum. Four objects is the minimum. Sometimes I may be carrying more because in my personal opinion, I say weapons, like we are, as James Keating once said, and I think I got something of his, as James Keating once said, we are weapon wielding monkeys, or tool wielding monkeys is how he put it in The Riddle of Steel. I watched that documentary, and he came up with the stingers, and these things are very, very, very effective as well. And I would say they're pretty much legal probably everywhere. They're inconspicuous. They look a little strange, so like I think that's kind of why they fell out of popularity a couple years ago, because you hardly find these things. But these are traditional combat technology stingers. I don't know if you can read that. These are the real article right here. These aren't knockoffs that you'll get off Amazon. These are combat technology stingers. But yeah, James Keating, he said, we're tool wielding monkeys. We need tools for everything. That's our weapon, the fact that we're able to use tools. If I don't have to fight empty handed, I'm not going to. But I do train in my own system of empty hand combat just in case, the sky was blue that day and I dropped all my weapons on the ground or like my pants fell off or something. But that's just for last resort because I'm always going to try and start off with something. It may not be a lethal force, but I'm going to have something like this right here so I don't have to break my hand on somebody's face. It's like I shouldn't have to feel like I have to use empty hand tactics to defend myself against someone who's trying to take my head off, especially if I didn't start the situation. I'm going to have something like this. It's coming out. If you're freaking trying to knock the teeth out of my mouth, it's like I'm going to defend myself with everything that I have, and I'm prepared to do it. I don't walk out my door without, being pretty heavily armed. So, but I understand the legal ramifications of lethal force, and understand just because these are less lethal, that does not mean that these right here are not going to carry some type of legal ramification if you use them wrong. Okay, because if you go assault somebody with something like this right here, and this is actually just training box cutter from Tack Knives, but it makes a perfect Yawara stick or Dulo Dulo. But if you go attack somebody with this, you go assail them, they didn't like ask for it or whatever, they just said something that made you mad, or they threatened you from across the street, and so you decided to walk up on them and hit them with something like this, you're in the wrong. You're going to jail. You can only use something like this in pure self defense. If the combat is mutual and they're walking from across the street and you're walking from across the street and y'all are going to meet in the middle because it's mutual, it's like, oh, you're going to mess this guy up and he's planning on messing you up, you better fight with your empty hands. It's like, because if it's mutual and then you pull out some type of weapon, you're in the wrong and you're going to jail. Okay, so, but if he walks across the street and you're like, no, I didn't want nothing, no, what, I don't want no trouble, man. Like, what the, it's like, and you're not the aggressor, and he walks across the street and like gets in your space ready to, knock your teeth out of your head, and you pull this out and defend yourself, you're probably not going to jail at that point. If you got enough witnesses around and you were in a place where there's a camera, you're probably going to be able to prove that in court. But like I say, anytime that you implement some type of object that will be considered a weapon in a court of opinion, it doesn't matter if it's a pool noodle. Okay, anytime you implement some type of outside force from your own body into a situation, an altercation, it's going to be considered to be a weapon. And so if you are going to use a weapon like in some type of situation, you better understand the law and the legal ramifications of it, or you're going to jail. Shock is designed to basically distract this dude. So, I mean, like, you shock him. If you can end it in shock, then that's a perfect world. That was a great day. If you can end it in shock and you don't have to go to latch and you don't have to go to stab, that's a good deal. You hit this guy once and maybe it doesn't freaking drop him to the ground, but maybe you break his nose, or you just hit him and it hurts and he realizes you ain't playing and he doesn't want no more. Great day. You hit him and you knock him out, or in the first shot, he's out cold snoring on the ground, and that's the end of it. Great day. You can't jump on him when he's done though. And if you hit him and he backed off and ran away like a little girl, you can't chase him down and continue to beat him as well, because you're going to jail. Hit him while he's on the ground. After he's knocked out, you're going to jail. Okay, but a lot of times you want to continue the shock until you can get the latch, or until the person is done. When I train in shock, and how I trained my wife, who was my training partner for a long time, and she was the one that I was training to get a feel for the system, basically a feel for training the system. I was training her. I'm a big fan of African Danby boxing. And Danby boxing is one of the oldest forms of boxing on this planet, okay? I don't know if it was always called Danby boxing, but if you look up boxing and then on Wikipedia and they're showing you a Manoa and Fresca or whatever, if you look closely and they're like, this is the oldest form of boxing, they don't mention Danby boxing. But if you look at the two boys who are supposedly boxing in that Fresca, okay, they're they only have one hand gloved, okay? So that's exactly how Danby is. Only one hand was gloved. And what that does, and this is why I decided to teach my wife, Danby concepts for shock, is because if we're focusing so much on attacking with both hands, it's very difficult, and you get your brain is trying to control both sides, and so your brain has two things to worry about, basically, is what I'm getting at. Two fists to worry about, and you get hung up on that sometimes. Well, but if in Danby boxing, it's the art of the shield and the spear and the shield. And so, if you watch Danby boxing, they'll be out like this right here, and they'll have one hand wrapped with leather, and this hand is not unwrapped, and they're like this right here, and this is their shield. They can bash with this and keep the guy at bay and do all kinds of distractions with this and defend, defend the strikes coming in and stuff. This is the shield right here. And then this back here, their power hand is their spear. So when you make it that, hey, well, now all I'm focusing on is this for attack and this for defense, like it really simplifies things. And then when you add in some modern combat stuff, like not just like my stance is here, now like a little bit tightened up. Maybe I'm not like using a fist because I don't like to use fists in self defense, and maybe I'm incorporating that elbow and I'm bashing with the forearm now, and doing helmet guards and covers as well, and doing pseudo diamond blocks as well in my defense. It makes things a lot easier to think about because this is for defense and this is for attack, basically. So that's what we do. That's how we train. That's how I'm going to train people in shock, is Danby concepts, basically. I'm not going to say it's traditional Danby because I've never gone to South Africa and trained in traditional Danby, but it's Danby concepts. So, I'm going to be like this in my defensive modified Danby, stance, basically. And but it looks like a defensive self-defense stance if you look at it right here. And since I'm here like this, if he goes to punch high, I can automatically go here for that cover. I can come up here for a pseudo, outward block. I can do a lot of stuff, but this is my defense. But then I can respond. If I went in that cover, I can respond right now with a spearing elbow right here. And then focus on going into those palms, into his face. Right there. I can be here. And I can also, be ready for that attack. But I could be like, hey, I don't want no. And go for my weapon, which in this case is going to be a less lethal. So right here, cracking ribs. This is still Medusa. Okay, this isn't evolving the system away from into something else. This is, or turning the system into something else. This is Medusa with a less lethal object. It's still 100% Medusa. So, I come here, and it's I don't want no trouble. He still wants to give trouble, so it's I like doing that slap right there because it's not going to be easily predicted right here. Like if you're like this, right here, the guy's in your face, and you kind of look off. When you kind of look off, that will bait this guy in to with the moment you break eye contact. In a lot of cases, if a guy wants to go ahead and sucker punch you, the moment you break eye contact, that does something to their ego or something. It makes them think that you are weaker than them and you're wimping out or something. And so the moment you break eye contact, and I kind of look away, I'm baiting this guy to come in, but I'm right before he does. So I don't want to. I looked off. I already struck him though. He never saw it coming. He never expected it. Okay. The moment I struck him, I already went into that tie, quarter tie or whatever that fight tie clinch, and in that process, I already pulled out my less lethal stabbing tool, and I'm already going to town, and I'll adjust and bring that into these ribs back here. Okay, everything, kidney and stuff. That's gonna be a bad day for him. He's gonna be laid up for a couple days.